Now to a story that will be forming the basis of our conversation this morning. Pastoralist communities in Marsabit County have been counting losses due to the biting drought. And as their livestock, their main source of livelihood, die in the thousands, the community's very existence is now under threat. The drought has left tens of thousands of children and families in a lifelong threatening situation, including the most vulnerable under 5-year-old children, pregnant and breastfeeding mothers. The schools that were once rescue centers have run out of food, and classrooms are almost empty as children cannot learn when they are hungry. NTV's Rose Ongwe traversed Marsabit County, and here now is her report, Starving North, and just a glimpse of that long-form feature.
The drive from Isiolo to Marsabit County is a refreshing experience. The hills stand as majestically as they have for years, but now their beauty is enhanced by a modern road that cuts through the valleys here. The journey on the well-maintained 540-kilometer route is a tourist attraction of sorts, but behind the beautiful peaks, the county is grappling with its worst drought in decades. Bubisa location lies along the Marsabit-Moyale highway. Here, the biting drought has virtually wiped out what was once a large expanse of rich green pastures. Grazing lands for camels, cows, goats and sheep are barren, forcing pastoralist families and their livestock to travel large distances to look for pasture. Barile Abdub is now used to the smell and grisly spectacle of rotting flesh festering in the scorching heat. Surrounded by barren scrubland littered with withered carcasses of camels, sheep and goats. For weeks now, Barile, like other herders, has watched helplessly as his herd perished one after the other. Even the most drought-resistant animals, such as the camel, cannot bear it any longer.
Na hii ukame ilianza na ngamia walianza kukufa, ilifuata na ngombe, punda pia, mbuzi. Hii ukame ilileta shida mingi kwa hii Wagabra. Ukame ikianza, mbuzi zamani wa kwanza ndio wanaanza kukufa, leo walibaki nyuma. Siku moja around kwa boma moja around 20 wanakufa mara moja. Maziwa hakuna. Nyama pia, unajua watu wanatumia nyama mbeleni, na nyama pia imeenda. Hakuna nyama.
Many boreholes in this area have dried up, and now only 2 are remaining, but even those cannot help now.
Your ball moja iliharibika na haijakuwa sawa. Almost ilikaa 3 weeks. Ball tunatumia mifugo, binadamu pia wanatumia. Maji pia ilikuwa salty. Si mzuri kutumia watu kukunya. Ni mfugo tu wanatumia. Kwa sababu ya hakuna siku zingine watu wanatumia tu hiyo maji. Inaleta shida ya kidney. Kila siku watu wana complain.
A similar story is repeated across villages in Laisami sub-county, where drought is ravaging pastoralists, taking away their economic lifeline, livestock. The fields are now empty, with only a few goats roaming about the vast lands. In Kambinye village, Ture is among herders in the region, readjusting to the stark reality of losing precious livestock to a harsh and unforgiving drought. He walks with a slight limp because he recently suffered a stroke thanks to the misery that is unfolding across this land.
I had many goats, sheep, cows and camels, but they have all died.
I was in shock and developed high blood pressure. For months, he struggled to accept it. He was in severe distress. An elevated heart rate and blood pressure confirmed it. He's now paralyzed on the left side of the body.
I was once a rich trader and the pride of the community. It feels terrible when even a single cow dies. But to lose all your animals means you are nothing.
He now spends time alone, locked up in a house where he is served his meals. Occasionally, he is taken out to bask in the sun. Kamasiane Gambare says that all living things that once occupied his cowshed have succumbed to the effects of the drought.
Mimi zamani niko ngamia 25 na ng'ombe ni 100. Sasa ng'ombe sasa amemalizika, hata hakuna hata moja. Ngamia sahi 5 peke yake ndio iko, na hiyo ngamia sasa yote amekuwa goigoi. Mbuzi sasa ni 15 ndio amepaki.
He was once the pride of this village, but that title has now been wiped out.
Zamani sasa mimi najiweza, mimi nasaidia hata ile wasasi yangu ile iko karibu yangu. Na ile mtu zamani nasaidia watu ni mimi. Sasa hata mimi nimekuwa kama hawa.
Clearly distraught, Gambare is in deep thought, counting his losses.
Tangu hii mali ameenda, kesho yangu sasa hapana mzuri. Mimi nafikiri kila kitu. Mimi nasomesha watoto 3 kwa secondary. Hiyo watoto sasa bado tana sasa watoto wengine sasa kwa hapa. Nimekosa mtu ile pesa ya kupeleka hiyo mtoto shule.
On our way to Murupu village, we meet Lochorowa Naruko carrying a sheep on his back in the harsh, sweltering heat. Exhausted and dehydrated, Naruko says he has walked for 8 hours, taking small breaks in between. He left Hulahula village at 3 a.m. and started the treacherous journey back home. The sheep, he says, was too weak to walk.
Aitembei kondo nikitembea unaondoka na utakatu. Hata nikugonga kama hivyo. Asubuhi aondoki. Nikubeba nikuja kwa.
Frail and emaciated, Naruko says he has not had a proper meal or a drink of water for 10 days. Life here is now a daily punishment, and even the dogs and scavengers, he says, are running away. Together with his sheep, we offer him a lift to his village. As we enter his village, the effects of drought are glaring. He says the past few months have been a living nightmare for these residents.
Hii watoto yangu siku 4 tunelala. Hakuna chakula. Ushungu. Akili nasema mukatafuta hiyo chakula.
Helpless, the father of 8 set off on a journey of 30 kilometers. He trekked to Hulahula village, hoping to get some help.
Tunalala siku ngapi? Laula 3. Chakula nuomba chakula. Mpaka tumebata kondoo moja. Chakula nikuomba sio yangu, ni watoto tu. Nikuondeka mpaka mgongo pole mpaka ikamini.
Sinaona hii kondoo sasa, hii mzee hawezi kuwa peke yake. Akichinja sisi wote tunafamia. Sababu yuko shida, hakuna kitu unakula.
Naruko has poured his life into his flock, but a spate of climate disasters has decimated his livelihood.
Ngami milango ngapi? Mbuzi milango moja tu 800, ng'ombe 18, alafu hata ngamia 5 peke yake iko.
A drive through Laisamis deep into Ngurnit engulfs you into a sense of despondency, acres of land filled with nothing but dying shrubs and dried dams stretch for kilometers on end. As the wind blows, giving you a reprieve from the heat and scorching sun, it carries with it a blanket of dust and sand. The villages are littered with rotten carcasses and dried bones from animals that used to reflect a community's identity. Homesteads that were once full of life have been reduced to chunks of bare land and abandoned makeshift homes. Families that once sat together for a meal are missing a father. The men have been forced to leave their families behind, seeking pasture to save the remaining animals. With drought worsening by the day, more children are facing the dangers of hunger and starvation. Dozens of mothers from the drought-affected villages of Ngurnit bring their children to be weighed and measured. The mobile clinic is part of the outpatient therapeutic program which treats malnourished children before they become sick enough to need hospitalization. Lucille Natwaki, like many children here, is bearing the brunt of the drought. She's underweight and emaciated. Her sunken features illustrating the severity of the hunger that continues to involve tens of counties in the country. When her mother heard about the outreach program, she walked for more than 10 kilometers. As indicated by the red color on this mid-upper arm circumference tape, the toddler is suffering from severe acute malnutrition. Traditionally, the baby would have fed on goat milk and meat, but her family's livestock have been wiped out by the drought. The mother cannot hide the pain she has endured for several days, going without food and seeing her child suffer.
I don't even have enough breast milk for her. I have been hungry for several weeks. She's weak because there's very little food at home.
The baby was born weighing a paltry 2 kilograms. Now at 6 kilos, she's added a paltry 4 kilos in 9 months.
For now, the baby survives on the plumping nuts. Without the supplements, she loses weight and gets emaciated.
Now that's just a glimpse of part one of Stavik North, a special report there by Rose Wangoi. We'll be getting much deeper into that conversation in a moment as I introduce my guest this morning. But just a quick run through on what's in the dailies as well. This is what's on the very front page of the Daily Nation. Kalonzo refused job offer, says Ruto. President William Ruto yesterday said he has made deliberate efforts to engage Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, including offering him a job in his government, which he flatly declined. That's on the stories on pages 5 of the Daily Nation. Inside the Daily Nation, also this report here, and just historical background. Inside security issue, inside plans to pull regional troops out of war-torn Somalia. Report there by Steve Otieno. We're going to move forward here. Let's get, that's a full report there. Still on security issues. Let's get to another story. Plan to fold Kenya Kwanza parties into UDA draws mixed reaction. This is yet another report here that's featured in the Daily Nation. Big ambitions. UDA chairperson says they want to make it as big and strong as the Communist Party of China. Pundits say parties such as ANC and Ford Kenya will die if the leaders hand over leadership to take government positions. Is it? Story by Onyango, K. Onyango there. And also, Kalonzo rejected my job offer. Ruto says that's what's on the front page of the Daily Nation. President says Ukambani region's development interests will be well taken care of in his administration. Kalonzo criticizes Ruto for declaring vacancies at IEBC. EPA leader warns against removal of 4 commissioners who disowned poll results. President William Ruto, declaration of vacancies at the Electoral Commission before the end of the term of the chairperson and 2 commissioners has been termed as irregular and suspect, describing the gazettement of the vacancies of the IEBC chairperson and the 2 members as a gimmick. The Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka asked why Wafula Chebukati is taking early retirement, yet several by-elections are in the offing. All right, moving forward, you do also have, let me just move my newspaper to the middle. All right, Raila orders probe into Paul's loss as he begins push for reforms. Well, while some believe Odinga is preparing for a 2027 run, his allies say reform fight is about the people. The opposition leader Raila Odinga has ordered an audit of the last election to identify his vulnerabilities, even as he faces an internal rebellion that will test his grip on his political constituency. All right, we do also have Junet Mohammed there, a close confidant of Odinga, saying the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition boss was working with national and international organizations to audit the August 9th election. He lost narrowly to President William Ruto in order to understand exactly what happened. Okay, moving forward. Kenyan nurse killed by patient in the U.S. Well, a Kenyan nurse on duty at a mental health care center in North Carolina in United States was stabbed to death by a patient. The suspected killer has a history of attacking women and has been in and out of prison. Report there by Ruth Mbula. Okay, moving forward, this is important for us as well. Also, a very interesting feature here, also will be forming the basis of our conversation inside the hungry villages of Turkana. We have all those, of course, the counties within the north. The north, Turkana, like other semi-arid and arid counties, is also facing a humanitarian crisis. And just moving forward, lastly on the Daily Nation, forest that is infamous for being killers' dumping site. The Nation was told that the killers prefer the area because it is isolated with locals rarely frequenting it. This is what they call, let me get that name correctly, the forest has been always in the news. Okay, I'm going to get you the name of the forest in a moment. I cannot read that properly. Okay, and still on the Daily Nation. Okay, I think we've finished with that. So we'll go to Business Daily, just on the front page of the Business Daily. China loans to Kenya fall for first time in 2 decades. Total lending dipped at 6.83 billion in June from 7.5 billion a year ago. Records show marginal drop in 2002. On Taifa Leo, watishia ufalme wa Raila. You can see Miguna there, and the former governor of Nairobi, Evans Kidero. Well, Miguna na Kidero wametangaza mipango ya kumng'oa kinara wa ODM kama kigogo wa eneo la Luo Nyanza, wakimlaumu kukwamiza jamii hiyo kisiasa na kiuchumi. You can find that on the second page of the Taifa Leo. And finally, on the East African, why General Muhoozi remains defiant with belief that he enjoys the youth support. He reckons he has the charisma and political acumen to inherit Museveni's mantle. That's what's been happening regionally, and you can find that report on page 7 of the East African newspaper. All right, so I'm just going to leave this there. And a quick look at the Standard also, just on the very front pages of the Standard. This is what we do have. Police seek clues on missing Indians in container of death. A blood-stained container said to have been holding cell and torture chamber of the disbanded police squad is undergoing forensic analysis to establish who was held there. Full splash, pages 3, 4, and 5 of what's in the Standard. Poor rains also blow to Ruto's food security plan. Counties are shelving their development plans to deal with the drought that threatens the existence of communities. The hope for cheap food is complicated by poor rains and high input. That's pages 8 and 9. Maybe just look at that page, because this is also important for us in this conversation. Pages 8 and 9 of that report. You can see leaders crying for help as hunger pangs force learners to drop out of school. And, you know, the poor rains and high inputs may scuttle the president's food security plan. The numbers that count in this report: tons of imported fertilizer, which include nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, that declined by 48% to 98,000 tons between April and June, compared to 191,000 tons last year. The biting drought that we are experiencing in the country. And let me introduce my panelists this morning just to have this conversation. Of course, with us this morning is Patrick Catello, the CEO, PASIDA, which is the Pastoralist Community Initiative and Development Assistance. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit about PASIDA and what work it does. We also do have Mumina Bonaya Golo, a woman representative in Isiolo County. Karibu sana, very good morning. And Felix Okech, the programs manager at World Food Program Kenya, a very good morning as well. Karibu. So we've seen, you know, several reports over the, you know, past recent weeks, and such we've seen from Rose Wangui. It is the dire situation that really Kenyans are facing with regards to the drought situation in the country. And, you know, we do have the numbers. We're talking about 4.5 million Kenyans facing acute food shortage. Maybe just give us an idea, a sense, because you work on the ground and you represent people on the ground, just an idea of exactly how dire the situation is. I'll begin with you, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Catello, CEO of PASIDA. PASIDA is Pastoralist Community Initiative and Development Assistance. It's a national NGO working in Kenya, in Samburu County, Marsabit County, and on need base transversing to other counties like Turkana, West Pokot, and Isiolo. And of course, as the name suggests, is a pastoralist-based organization. And of course, in as much as they're mobile with their livestock in search of precious commodities like water and pasture, we keep on moving with them, because these pastoralists, they have no boundary. Their boundary is just where the availability of these precious resources like water and pasture. So they need no passport to crisscross. They move wherever they find this precious commodity. So they can cross Ethiopia without passport. For them, boundary is just an imaginary line. Availability is what matters to them, regardless of whether they're citizens of Somalia, citizens of Ethiopia, or Kenya, or Sudan. So they keep on moving. So as Pastoralist Initiative and Development Assistance, of course, we have been there in existence for the last 12 years by registration. And of course, we also registered as a charity organization in the southern Ethiopia, in Ethiopia, working in southern region of Ethiopia. Of course, we felt that this pastoralist, we started on a very nuclear note, small micro note from Marsabit County. And we felt that we can not only just tie ourselves to working closer to, pastoralists in Marsabit, because they have no boundary. They keep on moving. So that is why we are in Samburu, because once our pastoralists cross to Samburu, they equally need services. They equally need services like community pastoralists in Samburu or in Marsabit or in Isiolo or in Wajir or in southern Ethiopia. So for us, we keep on moving. And of course, we have pastoralist circle of life is quite interesting.
All right.
You cannot just specialize in one area. You keep venturing into different thematic areas: water, education, livelihood, peace and conflicts, because with high mobility, they are bound to conflict. Okay. So those are key areas we are addressing. And of course, we are in humanitarian and development nexus. Yeah.
And we'll come to the aspects of how the drought has affected, different sectors. Let me get to you, Felix. You also work on the ground. WFP has done a lot of work in terms of trying to mitigate the situation. Also, just from where you sit, how bad is it?
Thank you very much. One thing that I think everybody's getting to recognize is emerging frequency and cyclical nature of drought and other climate-related emergencies in Kenya. I think in the past we used to have cycles of maybe every 5 to 6 years, then we see a drought or other weather phenomena. But of late, I think we are seeing a drought now every 2 years. And this current drought we're talking about is going actually into its 5th year of inadequate rains. The situation is really difficult on ground. We had a massive response in 2017 during the previous drought, working very closely with government. But this time around, I think with a 5th season playing out as a failure, I think things are going to get really, really bad. Currently, as you know, we have 23 counties that are really badly affected with the drought, the whole of the ASA, and we are seeing the coastal regions going down to Kwale and Kilifi, and now we are starting to see even the northern parts of Meru and Laikipia, and the situation is getting worse. The numbers are increasing. I think 3 years ago, when you talked about people who are in need of food assistance, we were talking about 700,000. Then we talked about 3.1. Recently, the previous assessment was 3.5. The projection was going to be 4.1 million. Now we are saying probability is 4.5 million in need of food assistance. So,
I mean, within just a span of 3 years,
yes,
this is quite devastating.
Yes, it is.
Situation.
It is a real devastating situation, and what makes it even worse is the devastation that you see in relation to livelihoods. And then also, like you presented as we were starting, then you see that impact also affecting children and mothers, pregnant and lactating women, when we look at nutrition. So as we speak now, I think this is the worst that we've seen. Luckily, there have been investments, especially since we had change of governments and counties doing some work, and also humanitarian development agencies have done some work in between, which has cushioned to some extent. But these are now also being overwhelmed with the drought situation. So we are going into a phase where everybody must really roll up their sleeves, because things are going to get really difficult if these rains fail, like they seem to be failing.
All right. Mheshimiwa Mumina, you represent your people in Isiolo. I mean, when you go there and when you're there, you're looking at the situation there and you're thinking, how did we get there? Do people come to you for assistance? I mean, from your space as a county government official, how is it?
Thank you, Zainab. Mumina Bonaya, County Woman MP, Isiolo County. I just came back from my county. And if you look at the situation on the ground, it's not even possible for us to work. You see, when you walk into a home and you find that people have not eaten for days, and there's nothing much you can do for them. It is spread across. Everywhere you go, there's hunger. You can see it, you can feel it. All water sources have dried up. There's no water for human and livestock use. Children are facing a situation of acute malnutrition. Mothers are struggling, especially the lactating mothers are struggling with that. I went to visit schools, it's no different. You could see they are struggling also. The school feeding program is no longer there. The sanitary pads program is no longer there. So you wonder how you could actually help the situation. Like he said, in 2017, the intervention from government was massive. Right now, there's very little intervention. People are struggling on their own. So as a leader, I'm left to wonder where to run to for help, because
it's complicated.
In the next few days, actually by the end of this month, if there's no major intervention, then we will lose lives and livelihoods.
And
in a larger scale.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, we're going to get back and continue with this conversation in a moment, but we really have to take a break. And just to inform you, you can chime in into this conversation. The hashtag to use this morning on our social media platforms is MLiveNTV, at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. My panelists will continue engaging us and having this discussion and exactly perhaps what we need to do from here on. I mean, just the situation is not looking good at all, and the projections is also quite bleak. So what way forward for us as a country? We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV, taking an in-depth look on the drought crisis in the country, and especially in the north, where that situation is quite dire. Now, Patrick, when we're looking at the complexities of the situation on ground, even having the drought aside, you already have poverty levels which are quite high. You do also have food and fuel prices. People cannot be able to make money to just get a simple meal in a day. So really, how does this drought situation in place affect the entire state of these communities?
Thank you very much. The lives and livelihood of pastoralist community depend on livestock, as we all attest to that. 80% is driven from livestock. And of course, with this kind of biting drought, which is now heading towards famine, no longer drought, is really alarming. And of course, they depend on their livestock for everything. Their wealth is not in bank accounts. Their wealth is in wolves of their animals. So that is the best they can perform and the best they can do to support their livelihood. But with this intensive drought, these livestock are gone. The population of livestock is really decreasing drastically, hours by hours, day by day, minutes by minute. As we are speaking, they must be dying in huge numbers as they're trekking to water points. They are weak. The environment is completely degraded. And literally, themselves, those who are on high mobility, are now becoming environmental refugees. And they need further attention, a serious one, not on a small scale, on a very large scale. We say that if these people now are going to lose all this livestock, what will happen to them next? They cannot be on food support or therapy for the entire period of their life. That is the population in food aid as we speak. If we just take a sample of Marsabit County, already 42,147 households are in dire need of food aid. If we relate to a population, 2,500 people are in dire need, or population are in dire need of food aid. Meaning the total population of Marsabit County, as it was in the last census, was 461,000. Almost half of the population are in dire need of food.
So that's about 250,000.
250,000.
Right.
So that means their life is in really bad situation. The trend, we are not in alarm now. We are in emergency phase at this particular time in place. In the last long-range assessment, we are in alarm. Now we are clocking towards emergency because the population is really suffering. Now we are not talking about livestock. Livestock are gone. We are just talking how best we can save human life. Otherwise, pastoralists are quite resilient people. Hardly do they speak out and put their problem in the air. But looking at them now, of course, they are suffering. There are a lot of cases reported, but not reported as per se. There are a lot of, elderly, lactating mothers, pregnant mothers suffering, and others have succumbed.
So you do have the most vulnerable in the communities actually facing an even intense, situation.
Surely.
Right.
I should say, elderly people, you hear a report of an elder has died, and the elderly mother has passed on. These are all as a result of opportunistic diseases, which is related to starvation. So should we say that if emergency and thorough and upscaling this intervention is not in place, then we are going to go for bad. We are going to witness something different in some few weeks to come. And already the prediction, as it has been said, is going to be depressed in the October-November rain, meaning by end of, this month, October, which is some few days to go, most of these livestock are gone.
And if we do have the rains, and hopefully that the rains will be able to come, will it at least aid the situation to some extent and just cushion the communities?
Of course, once it rains, again, of course, this body condition of these livestock are in bad shape.
Right.
There will be huge loss once it rains in the first place. Now, during drought, they are dying in numbers every day, but you will see huge numbers of death because of shocks. Once it showers, slight shower today, we receive slight shower today, then you will see a lot of reported cases of massive death, as what was experienced in May.
Why is that?
In Marsabit. The body condition of these animals are weak. The fallback area is already out of stock. So literally, starvation is on the rampart even for both livestock and human being. Of course, there's no milk. Milk production. It's not there. No production from livestock as we are talking. People are just depending on pockets of food aid and cash transfers that non-state actors and state actors have been providing. Otherwise, literally, people are just waiting for relief food. People are just waiting for support, and they are not reverting to their livelihood that they used to get livelihood out of it. So it is really a shocking moment when we are seated here, and what we saw on the ground and what has been put on medias all over is true situation of what is happening. You see litters of, carcasses of dead animals littered everywhere, in every centers. It's also raising a lot of hygiene issues in these centers, at water points. And you see, all sectors are affected. School-going children, there's likely sexual harassment and exploitation of young girls, and of course pastoralists, as we say. We have been advocating for enrollment drive for many years. These kids will drop out of school because they don't get food in schools. When they go back, they have nothing to revert to, meaning all lives are on the verge. So we need to upscale.
Right.
We need to do something better than what we are doing.
Okay.
What we are doing is just a drop in the ocean,
A temporary relief, maybe just a small bandage.
Absolutely, it's just a drop in the ocean.
The wound is big.
The pool is big, right. The need is huge, but the resources, it's not there.
A drop in the ocean,
to support. Yeah.
Right. Let's hear from Mheshimiwa Mumina. Let's speak from the education part of it. He's spoken about the issue of education, and indeed, children, and we're getting reports that children are missing school because of this situation. There is no food at home, so there's no food in school, so why are we going to school? Tell us about the impact of this. Have you received any reports as a county-woman representative in Isiolo of children who are missing schools, and this is now taking back the gains that we've made to ensuring that all children are in school?
Thank you. As you know, as a country, we've got a policy that ensures that we have 100% transition from pre-primary, primary to secondary.
Right.
A lot of effort has gone towards that in ensuring that each and every child goes to school. But in the current situation, those gains are at risk simply because of hunger and the fact that the school feeding program that has always been there to encourage young people to stay in school is not consistently run. I visited school, and what schools are doing when relief food are sent from county government and national government and NGOs around there, the principals go there to beg for food so that they can keep learners in school. That should not have been the case. In fact, this is the moment that the school feeding program should be robust in terms of ensuring that our children stay in school. Unfortunately, when we need it most, that is when it is not, done. Similarly, I mentioned about sanitary pads program that is with the ministry. Right now, there's no home that can afford to buy a girl child a sanitary pad. They can't, they're even struggling to put food on the table. So sanitary pad is a luxury.
It's a secondary need
in fact,
where
on the
we
list
are
of
right now,
prioritized needs, it goes down there. So if the government is not doing it, that means that vulnerability levels goes up. You'll find that these girls will probably engage in other activities to find a coin that will enable them buy sanitary pads. So what I'm saying is, I think both from government side, especially national government, it looks like we are always reacting to drought situation. We are never prepared. I mean, we do have climate information that has been shared across from the beginning, that there will be depressed rain, there will be no rain this season. It's been shared all through. But I have not seen, level of action that probably shows that we were prepared as a country. We always find ourselves in an emergency situation and prepared. So I think as a country, what we probably need to relook is our drought policy in terms of how we manage it. How do we manage drought? Do we wait for the last moment when there is crisis? That is when we start appealing to everybody else and start responding. And by the time we respond, the situation on the ground has already worsened. Livelihood is lost, human life is lost, all structures, social and economic structures has been, destroyed. Then the response at that point will not help much because recovery in itself is also equally expensive. So I think as a country, we probably need to start asking ourselves, how do we prepare? Because climate change is here with us. Like we've been mentioned here, it's cyclic. The drought keeps on coming back. Unlike in the past where you will stay for 7, 8 years without
the frequency is now
the frequency
right.
and severity is growing day by day.
Right.
So how do we prepare? Do we wait for people to die? Do we wait for them to get in a situation where their dignity is taken away because they don't have food on the table?
So this is a wake-up call, right? But let me, before I get to Felix, just very quickly as well, when we talk about the space of national government as well as the county governments in coming together to address this issue, do you think county governments have been able to address this issue sufficiently, or are there some of the challenges that perhaps they are also facing, so that, when we're talking about Isiolo, when we're talking about Marsabit County, where is the county government in this?
Zainab, when I talk of government, I'm making reference at both levels.
Right.
But in such situation, you will need the national government to make an appeal. You can't just declare a drought and emergency and sit back. That's not enough. But beyond that, as a country, how prepared are we every time we are facing drought situation? In every intervention that you see, you actually don't see that we were prepared from the beginning. We knew very well that this is going to be a severe drought and it will affect everybody. The food prices will go up. There will be no food for families. Pastoralists will move into a space where they will start, conflict over resources. We knew all these will be coming our way. So with the meetings that is happening between national and county government,
right?
What impactful intervention is being undertaken?
Okay. And we'll come back to some of the measures that have already been put in place by at least, not just even the government, but also the non-state actors in this country. Now, Felix, when we're talking about the impact of climate change in all this, I mean, you know, Mheshimiwa Mumina has talked about the frequency and severity of the drought and what we're seeing. It continues to grow by the years. What is it, you know, the impact of climate change in the situation that we're witnessing right now in the country?
Thank you very much. I'll come to climate change, but just making reference to some of the things Mheshimiwa was saying.
Correct.
And then looking at the context in which Kenya finds itself. 2021, the early part, there are a lot of things that are happening that we need to take cognizance of. In 2021, we had the desert locust issue that actually impacted on some of the counties in the north, including Isiolo, where Mheshimiwa comes from. That was followed by the drought starting to take a strong foothold.
Right.
Then we had the COVID, which impacted on the economy and worldwide economy. And then we also have now the international issues that are impacting on prices of commodities and impacting on the economy.
Correct.
So everything is coming together.
So there's an accumulation of all this. It's a complex situation.
It's a very complex situation, and it's an accumulation of disaster upon disaster, which is a real wake-up call for all of us. WFP, from where we come from, what we normally do is we work very closely with the national government on a number of areas. The top priority for us is actually on working on capacity, working with the government to strengthen capacity for things like some of what we're saying, for preparedness actions, strengthening the social protection angle, strengthening of the systems and tools that can be used for preparedness and also for response. Like, I mean, we are talking about things like the single registry. If the government can quickly use this kind of tools to respond. And also we are currently also focusing a lot, and not just now, from a few years back, on working with the county governments and national government on issues around resilience. So looking at how can we ensure that the vulnerable areas and vulnerable communities can have infrastructure and activity in place that make them handle the shocks better. But these are things that need to be done at a much bigger scale, and that is the direction that we need to be looking at. So looking at, coming back to issues around climate shock and picking from the resilience discussion, I think it's very clear that the climate change is with us, and all of us must work together, especially focusing on issues around resilience of the most vulnerable community, and then preparedness actions for the shocks that we expect. Right now we are talking about drought. I'm sure Ms. Bonakatelo and Mheshimiwa, a few months down the line, we will be talking about floods. Then the next thing, drought again. So preparedness to ensure that the communities are protected against the negative impact of the climate shocks, and also looking at how can we harness then some of these events, like when it rains. How can we harness that water that is just basically flowing away? Because as we look at bigger projects around resilience and production, people will talk about irrigation and boreholes and all that.
Correct.
But with less and less rain, it will mean that soon you'll be depleting your aquifer also. So prepare issues around working on resilience, working on climate adaptive behaviors, elements of cultural change, which is difficult, also has to be looked at. Because I mean, if you are a pastoralist and you've been warned drought is coming, but you don't want to manage the stock that you have, you end up losing it. And this is a deeper discussion that needs to be had in terms of how do we also manage the resources based on the impact of the climate that we are seeing around. So working on those levels, and then when it comes to an issue where now we have a disaster like this, then we also, like for example, the government declared the drought a national disaster in September last year. And we've been working with other well-wishers and donors to raise the resources that are required to support. And maybe this is something that will come later in the discussion But what we like to say is by the time we are responding, in terms of it's a very expensive exercise.
Right.
And if these resources can be used at an earlier point in time to work on the resilience, to work on climate smart agriculture, and to work on engaging the communities in best practices, given where we are going, then I think it would also be very impactful, both for us as the non-state actors and also with the government. So we will continue to work very closely with the national and county governments in this approach, where we really focus on preparedness actions, climate smart approaches, working on enhancing the resilience of the most vulnerable communities, and then responding as a last resort.
But why do you think that most of our efforts as a country, not just in Kenya, but across many other countries who are facing this situation, is mainly, you know, reactionary? And do you think this influences the state of what we're talking about, preparedness for future droughts?
Yes, we've been reactionary for quite a while, or seem to be reactionary for quite a while. But look at that, like I'll just describe the context. Sometimes things can all come together in what some of my colleagues call a perfect storm, which should really be a wake-up call to everyone and say, going forward, we need to do things differently. And we need to learn from others. For example, when we talk about enhancing capacity, WFP is present in over 120 countries. So there are a lot of experience that WFP can bring to both national and county governments, how other places things have been done which have similar contexts to Kenya, which have improved the lives of the people. So I think, like you are saying, the most important thing is to find a way of moving from reaction to preparedness. Reaction, so we have preparedness actions, and then we put in place practices that are aligning with the climate situation change that is very present. So preparedness and really taking cognizance of the climate change. And so climate smart agriculture and climate smart practices that can safeguard the livelihoods of our people, even as we experience these shocks. There are many countries which are in totally dry situations, which are doing very well. We talk about, Israel, and what are they doing differently? It doesn't really rain there. You go to the northern Africa areas, you don't hear people talking about food insecurity, Algeria, Egypt, and there are examples of places where there's actually, desert. But the practices that have been put in place, plans and infrastructure that has helped the people to be as food secure as far as possible.
But when we're talking about, Patrick, food security, you work with pastoralist communities mainly. There are these measures that have been floated around, and perhaps even try to be integrated within those communities to sort of move them from perhaps just mainly depending on livestock to agriculture, perhaps. Has PASIDA worked with those communities with regards to that, and how have they taken it?
Yeah, thank you very much. For the purpose of record and also for the purpose of reference to the past, we need to reflect to present and then try to forge to future. For pastoralists, of course, that is their livelihood, as we said. That is their main livelihood, as they derive their livelihood from their livestock. And in this case, of course, most of the time, as said by my colleagues, that they have been undergoing series of, errors, man-made errors and human-made errors, and at the same time, natural catastrophes. We were caught up by flood, sometimes in the middle of the drought. Sometimes we go deep into other kind of issues like locust, which we just saw it after 100 years time. And again, followed by COVID-19. All these are unusual kind of circumstances that has befallen on pastoral communities. And of course, at times it's said pastoralists don't prepare. They do. And they, of course, some school of thoughts keep on saying pastoralists don't change their lifestyle or their livelihood or to that. No, they do. Others are saying that they keep these animals for prestige. No longer do they keep livestock for prestige. They do commercialization, but they have been so much deep into slumber of market failures. You know, terminal markets. You know, never times they had a satisfactory market for their livestock. Terminal markets, I mean feeder markets, are feeding the terminal markets, which offers a list price for their livestock. So they keep on, keeping huge numbers of stocks because of these market failures. On the same, of course, there are lifestyle changes. The consumption of this product is also getting lower. People don't eat much meat. You know, there are those kind of ideologies of not consuming too much red meat, you know. These are all discouraging aspects to pastoralists. And of course, the product that they're getting from their animals, market has been a very big issue. Looking at the drought, pastoralists have been cushioning themselves, and as organizations, as non-state actors, we have been so much into this business of resilience building. You know, these resilience building programs, at the same time, are also, you know, short-lived, supported for 2-3 years, then projects comes to an end. Pastoralists need to be revisited and to be updated all the times. You know, they need long-term programming as in terms of resilience building programs so that they can cushion themselves against all these odds. In terms of diversifying their livelihood, yes, they are set for it. They are taking their children to school as purported and as being, you know, emphasized in terms of enrollment drive. The first respondent at this particular point in time during such a severe drought, which has, you know, from 2011 to date, you know, we have been, you know, in the past it comes to after 10 years, 5 years, the trend keeps on dropping. Now we are facing it almost yearly. From 2011 to date, we have undergone several droughts, and of course, those times like 2011, there were a lot of interventions which came in handy from both government and also donor communities, just because it was declared and it was actioned. This time, the intensity is high, the magnitude is too much for pastoralists, but intervention is minimal. And of course, we have undergone series of, you know, changes. You know, this year we had election, which superseded, I mean, focus on drought. We had the Ukraine problem, which has really caused a lot of changes, you know, inflation, you know, food price, fuel price. All these factors compounded has really made pastoralists to suffer these vagaries on a very large scale. They can change. They are not, you know, their mindset is changing with kind of, you know, capacity building that they have been undertaking all this time round. But still, you know, actioning and upscaling is very critical for them. If they take their children to school, these are the first respondents during drought. Every child or every person who is secure a job opportunity are the first respondent during drought to their families. But very minimal percent of this kind of human resource are there among the pastoralists who can support their families. The bulk of the population are still people who needs to be supported. And then if you invest in education, is key. That is one key thing as per your question. Then the second thing is to change the livelihood in terms of practicing some other kind of livelihood programs, investing in rain-fed agriculture. And that depends on, of course, because of climate change, and I mean the trend and the weather pattern has changed now that they cannot realize even long rain or short rain in time. 4 consecutive seasons, even if they revert to agriculture, that will not be much helpful. But invest in groundwater exploration, you know, so that massive groundwater exploration is done, so that they can do irrigation and get alternative livelihood from that. Then the other bit is you have changed in terms of education, you have enhanced education, you have revert to alternative livelihood. And then the other thing is for them to keep minimal number of livestock, which is value adding, not looking at the quality, but I mean quantity, but quality of livestock, so that they can have much better than getting stressful, looking after 1,000, which will produce as good as few, which can get you better. All these needs, you know, it's not an overtime event, or it's not something that can come at one touch. It should progressively be continuing, and we have to change. And of course, the other bit is in policy. If policies are not there, you can't work out anything. We must have a thorough policy that addresses pastoralist communities. You know, it's really worrying. My movement, migration, that's their livelihood. If they don't practice high mobility, and of course they will bound to fall into pitfall. Look at case of land tenure system. If community land system is being enhanced and community land is registered, you know, there will be controls, and everybody will be taking part of. Huge chunk of this land is being grabbed for other kind of investment. You know, road infrastructures, lab-set corridors, oil exploration. These ones are all denying opportunity and space for pastoralists.
But there should be a balance. There should be some sort of a balance there,
absolutely.
Right.
And on top of that, we need to caution and to make strategic measures in place. And this is in policy. If these policies are there, you know, at the national level, cascades to county level, and every county has its policy on drought mitigation, policy on climate change. You know, we have been moving all around the world, going for COP26. Now COP27 is on its way coming. This level of discussion should be picked from on such a high-profile platform, so that it can be addressed. Pastoralist occupies huge chunk of lands in Kenya, but how is this land utilized? How is this land used into productivity? How is this land managed? You know, these are all issues, hard issues that we need to look at.
All right, and Mumina, I'm going to pick up on the issue of the policies and legislation as well. I mean, you know, you are a representative of the people. Do we need, as a country, to, you know, develop more when you talk about responsive disaster management policies and legislation?
Thank you. I think from the policy point, first of all, as policy makers, as government, as implementers, we probably need to have a good understanding of the rangeland. You know, most of the time when you engage a policy maker, they simply tell you pastoralists need to abandon their livelihood of pastoralism and take up other livelihood program without really getting to understand how rangeland works. Rangeland has got its uniqueness, which is variability when it comes to climate. We've never had a problem with you know, drought situation. We only get to have a problem when it is frequent. We know how to cope with variability as pastoralists, and we know how to cope with scarcity as pastoralists. For us, scarcity is in space and time. In space, that means it rains, it doesn't rain here, it rains elsewhere. So we move with our heart. In time, it means it doesn't rain this season, but we are sure it will rain the next season. So we are still okay with that. So that understanding, first of all, needs to be clear. Before everybody or anyone says abandon pastoralism and move on to crop farming. Crop farming will still happen in the same environment. So what difference, like he's asking, what is the difference? The challenge we have as a country is that, first of all, like he said, there's so much fragmentation of the rangeland. There are other competing land use that are pushing pastoralists to a corner. We have conservancies that are taking up our key resources. You know, the areas that traditionally used to be our fallback areas when there's drought. Where we have key resources, we have enough pasture, we have enough water. We used to retreat there when there's drought. We can no longer access those areas because other competing land use demands are taking up those areas. You know, we have insecurity that has come up as a result of this. You know, when you are all pushed in one corner, you converge and you start fighting over the little resources that is available.
Okay.
And we want to explain that as climate change. It's not climate change. I've told you, pastoralists, for the years that have been in existence, they've learned how to cope with climate change. But now, when the land is taken up, the most rich part of their rangeland is taken up for other use, then they are forced to, you know, scramble for the little resources that is there, and as a result, end up fighting. If you go to a place, there are places where you will find pasture, but there's no water, so they can't get in. There are places where there is pasture and water, but they can't go in because of insecurity, and the government is not doing much about that. So there are all these problems that actually needs to be understood within the policy that we are talking about. For us, mobility is very critical. We need to be mobile so that we can cope with the changing climate. If you limit our mobility, then we become vulnerable. Pastoralists, they become vulnerable. So how do you ensure their mobility? The issue of community land. Is the community land secured? I know we have a Community Land Act in place, but have we secured our land as pastoralists? Or it's free for all, you know? And as we talk about this, the issue of drought, because of its frequency and severity, the government, both at national and county level, needs to stay prepared always. There must always be a budget, you know, reinvest for that purpose. Intervention. Are we investing in social protection programs that, you know, will build the resilience of these communities, so that when the drought shocks happens, they can bounce back stronger? It's not like every time there's drought, we become vulnerable. Every time there's flood, we are more vulnerable. Every time there's locust invasion, we are even worse. Where is our resilience to stand these shocks? Because these shocks will be there longer, and it will appear almost every year. So can we invest in, you know, social, economic aspect that these communities depend on, so that even if there's drought, they can withstand? That's all I'm asking. So in the policy, that all that needs to be defined. You can't just keep on telling them abandon pastoralism. They can't. The rangeland largely supports pastoralism, not crop farming. Yeah.
I mean, Felix, let's just talk a bit more as well, still on the issue of policy and legislation, and the fact that, you know, we do have, and do we need to develop more? Because we know we do already have, you know, responsive disaster management policies and legislation in place. It seems not to be working. What more can we do in terms of developing that to help not just the pastoral communities, but even the communities like you talked about in the coastal areas, Kwale, Kilifi?
Speaking as a Kenyan, I think we have a reputation of developing very good policies, but implementation sometimes becomes a challenge.
Right.
But going back to the matter at hand, I think there's a need for a special look at policies on issues around rangeland, like Mheshimiwa is saying. I think when we develop agriculture policies, if you look at agriculture policies, they're not normally focused on also thinking about the ASA. It's more the usual productive line of thought that you see our policies cover. But and I think that the discussion around rangeland and how to manage the ASAL areas, because the ASAL is huge. I mean, the ASAL is 89% of Kenya. It's a huge area of land that it's really important to really think about how we can better work as communities within these areas, manage the assets and opportunities with these areas better to enhance the resilience of the community that stay there. Mheshimiwa touched on the issue around rangeland management. I think it's a very sensitive issue. I'm not an expert in that area, but my visits to the field, I've witnessed the difference between where the rangeland is managed and where it's free for all, like she was saying. And I think there's a part of Isiolo, there's an elderly man up the hill. I visited him, I forget his name now, who I think based on his position or what, he has this piece of land which he has fenced off and is very well managed. So you pass through this dry and areas where there's nothing, and you drive into this area which is managed, and the person has pasture for the livestock. Because it's put in place some practices. So it's policies around land management, and then also working with the communities to see the benefits of the same, to ensure that the communities actually, they own that particular process. That the challenge will be when something is being loaded on the community and they're not involved in the development of those policies, so that they own the policy itself and are aligned with the objectives that the policies want to meet. So that's an area that definitely needs to be looked at further. Like I said before, the other thing which is very, very critical is preparedness actions. I think it's time that we sit down as Kenyans and friends of Kenya, the international community, international organizations, the local NGOs, and say, listen, how do we manage preparedness actions, and what does it require to put in place the preparedness actions? Third, very critical, is we now have to be smart, climate smart. There's no option. You see it all over the world. That there's a climate change, and if you're not climate smart, I think we'll have problems forever.
Right.
Fourth is the world is facing crisis after crisis, the whole world. So even in terms of humanitarian assistance, that's going to reduce. I mean, most of our assistance comes from the Western world, America, Europe, and we are seeing the problems that are also being faced in those particular locations. So we cannot also depend perpetually on humanitarian support. That will be digging our own grave. So those four things we need to look at very keenly to safeguard the livelihoods of our people and also our lives, which are actually at stake even as we speak today.
Okay, thanks, Felix. Time for yet another break here on M Live on NTV. Very engaging conversation. I can see a number of comments here. I'll be sampling them when we come back right after the break, so stay with us. We'll be back in a short while.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one, with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
Kabarak University, in collaboration with the Kenya Innovation Agency and the Association for Countrywide Innovation Hubs, will be having a discussion on the commercialization of research and innovation on Monday, 24th October from 7:45 p.m. to 9 p.m. All innovators and stakeholders in the commercialization of research and innovations are invited to join the conversation.
No, but where did you write the answer, kijana?
Ndio hii hapa chini number 6.
Lo, salale kijana yangu, umeandika kwamba the square root of 72 is Jesus as the final answer.
But it's true, he does.
Kijana, he is you. CRE bwana. What is this in number 6?
Oh, there the teacher asked the wrong question.
That is why number 5, you deleted the question and asked your own question.
Ni mwalimu aliset vitu kufunza so nikamcorrect.
Maajabu.
Yes?
To get report book by Skiza Na Nation and Flacco, dial star 812 star 807 hash. Skiza Na Nation.
All right, thanks for staying with us. You're watching M Live on NTV. The hashtag we're using this morning is M Live NTV at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail, taking a look at the dire state of counties facing the drought situation. Now, Patrick, I mean, when we're looking at, you know, some of the interventions, not just by the county governments, the national government, let's talk about PASIDA and what interventions you've put in place to ensure at least the communities that you're working with are able to cope with this situation, and what more needs to be done. What is at stake? What more needs to be done?
Thank you very much. For interventions, of course, we've been doing it as PASIDA. We've been doing on a scale that, of course, cannot reach to every part of counties where we are working. Of course, as they have lost their lives and livelihood, quite a number of engagements are done with them in terms of water tracking for those villages which are far-fetched from water points. Some of them are not close to water points. They trek to water point for 50, 60, 70 kilometers, and there are no permanent water sources where they are. So, you know, for them, mobility, as I've said, is in their lives. They cannot do without mobility with their livestock. And of course, with time, they are losing much, and they're getting somehow sedentarized. A lot of sedentarized centers are coming up. And even in these centers, there are no water points, so you keep on tracking water for them, which is a very expensive venture.
Right.
You try to provide food to them, and of course, food is expensive too, with inflation and with this kind of, global melt, which is all over.
Correct.
We are realizing a lot of hiccups. Food shortage is on rice, and that's why you see people are really starving. You try to secure fundings to give them food, but food is not available. That's one key issue that we have realized. One of the very important things that needs to be upscaled. Availability of food is critical. And of course, we also do cash transfers. You know, cash transfer is...
How does it usually work?
This is how it works.
Right.
You just enroll those vulnerable members of the community through their own system of identification, and verification is being done by the community themselves.
So you have a database of the households.
Database of the households for every areas. So we keep on trying to reach to, at a different level, the engagements. At county level, we engage seriously in county steering groups where issues are discussed, where every organization or government at the national or at county level will put what they have on the table and try to share to avoid duplication and underscore for others. Of course, you know, for example, Marsabit County, as per se, is vast, 78,000 square kilometers.
Right.
And the smallest and the most vulnerable communities are living on the edge of Kenya-Ethiopian border, like Dasanach, El Molo on the far end. So these people also equally need services. So for you to reach to this kind of people, you need to strike balance for every community to be serviced and to be supported. With the cash transfer, of course, we've learned that we started with 3,000, which was an agreeable figure in 2011 drought through county steering group. Then, you know, lifestyle is changing, you know, everything is changing, population is growing. So we said, now there was a study which was done to see what can be sufficient and efficient to reach to our household. So cash transfer was seen to be viable and also dignified, because whoever you give money through M-Pesa services will go for food of their choice. You know, you'll not limit them to their choice.
But is it sustainable?
I'm talking about current interventions.
Right.
It's not sustainable, but you know,
this is at least what we can be able to do.
This is something that you can do at the moment to save life.
Right.
We are not talking about a sustainable program. We are talking about saving lives.
Correct.
So if you, instead of giving food much to them, if you provide this cash transfer, it's a bit more dignified.
Right.
And of course, they will go for their choice, what they feel like buying. And of course, it's even timely because it doesn't need you to travel and load food on the truck and move for many days without reaching to the suffering humanity. So you just register, you verify using, skills that has been put, how many people are benefiting, how many within this village are not benefiting from other kind of intervention like old age, HSLP programs, and all this. So we run this data, and if you are not falling into category of those who are benefiting from other portion, you support this kind of families. And of course, it reaches on timely basis, as I've said, and people will get their funds and their money on time, and also utilize them on time. And of course, for such a time when drought is really biting, all sectors are affected. We have said education is affected, and we support also school feeding programs from ECD to ensure smooth transition from early childhood to primary, then to secondary, and then to university. If this transition is affected, we shall have a lot of dropouts who will be engaged in illegal kind of issues like drugs, kids going into something that cannot be accommodated, socially within the community, and it can also destroy social setup of any given community. So we ensure that retention is done through support from our back donors and back partners, school feeding program for primary school because they need to feed, and also for secondary school, such a time their parents are overstressed. They cannot afford to pay school fees for their kids. So we go into what we call cash. Food for cash. You complement secondary school with food, and so that a child will be retained in school instead of dropping out. So we do a lot of board repairs. Water aquifer is also affected. Most of this frequent breakdown of these boreholes. And also, at such a time, capacity of this pastoralist to afford to buy fuel even for their borehole is hard. So we do fuel subsidy for boreholes. And also, equally, we engage into life saving for livestock by providing livestock feeds to households affected, so that at least the basic herd, can be saved and they can remain. Because if this pastoralists lose all this livestock, where will you take them? Do you have anything tangible in place to replace their livelihood? No. So the few ones which will remain, this severe drought, will keep on regenerating, and they will go back to their normal life. So in this case, all these kind of interventions are done. Water tracking is done, food supplement, high nutritious food for malnourished children and expectant and pregnant mothers, and more so even to people affected with HIVs, and to disabled. These are the key people who are really suffering, because those who manage to run with their few livestock to far-fetched areas will run with them, and of course they're also suffering. But those ones who are left at home, with the normal homestead, will be those classes or groups of people who are in their need of support. So in this case, we do this kind of intervention. Of course, it's not sustainable. Better give them teach them how to fish than giving them fish. That should be the guiding principles. But however,
but we're already in this situation.
We are already in this situation.
We must address this already.
We must address this situation at this point in time,
before we move forward. But we must keep in mind what we need to do.
What we need to do, of course, for reconstruction. And what next after the drought. Because we understand that the remaining livestock will keep on dying, and if it rains, the few ones remaining, the gestation period of a camel is 9 months. For you to get the product of this animal, it will take another 1 year. So recovery is really something that we need to plan intensively. Yeah, and of course, for now, we need to upscale, and we need to ensure that we save this kind of vagaries and suffering humanity. Because service to humanity is service to God. So we need to serve this community in the best interest of them being part of this citizen also.
Fantastic. Mheshimiwa Mumina, when we talk about the interventions that are already in place, But also looking back at the trickle effect of drought, I think Patrick mentioned something to do with the cases of perhaps could be an increase in dropouts from school, but also an increase in sexual and gender-based violence. I do not know from where you sit as a county woman representative, if you've heard of any of these cases, how is the county responding to some of these, trickle-down effects of the drought?
Zainab, talking of intervention, we first of all have got a situation where we must address now.
Correct.
And then once we are out of this, we can talk of, policy issues, long-term plan, and preparedness. At the moment, what is required is the very basic things like food and water in homes and in school. In school, because we want to maintain those learners in school. Because the moment we send them home, even now, we've been appealing to principals, telling them that kindly do not send any learner home because of school fees. The moment that learner goes home, he or she will never come back.
It's true.
So, so principals are really struggling with that aspect. They are trying to feed students in school. There are no fees that are being paid by parents because parents are not in a position to make a payment. And at home, families are also struggling with, putting food on the table. So what I've seen in my county, the county government is really trying to take food to, every village in the county. But I'm looking at the food ratio that is being provided. It will take probably a home for 2 or 3 weeks. Then thereafter, the situation is still the same.
Right.
That is why I'm saying we need a consolidated effort, both from county level to national level, whereby we look at the situation beyond the rains that will probably come tomorrow. Because if the rain falls today, it doesn't mean that the hunger will go away. We will still have 3, 4, 5 months to manage the situation until the communities get out of it stronger. So what are we doing? How are we planning? How are we coordinating? Because if there's an intervention from national government and another one from county government and another one from NGOs that are helping like PASIDA and WFP, how are we coordinating them? So that we don't all probably duplicate our efforts. How do we look at it beyond the rainfall until the communities are on their feet? So for me, the situation within the school setup also needs to be given a special attention. We send those children for school fees, they will never come back. We send them on holidays. With the current situation, they might not come back. So it's even safer keeping them in school right now. For the girls, the trouble is more for them. Yeah? This is the moment where families are thinking of marrying off young girls as a coping mechanism so that they can get some coins to keep on going. So how do we protect them from that? So
it is the harsh reality on the ground, indeed, right?
So the girls might even get involved in activities that probably will, lead to pregnancy, and that means that they will drop out of school. So how do we work on a situation where probably we'll have many girls pregnant between this period, and then the schools open? Do we leave them at home, or should we work on a campaign that will bring them back? So for us, once we are out of this situation, we will probably require a robust campaign that will bring back all the children to school. That needs to be planned for, that needs to be undertaken at the right time.
All right. Felix, still on, maybe just tell us a little bit also on the work that WFP here in Kenya is doing to ensure at least there's some level of cushioning for the communities most vulnerable. I also do understand you've launched a program, I believe, on wastage of food in schools. Maybe just also tell us a little bit about that and why that is important, and is it working?
Thank you very much. So there are about 3 areas that we are focusing on. One is more on the longer-term engagement with government. So this is looking at supporting the capacity at government, at national government level. We work very closely with the national government on issues including policy, looking at issues like social protection, and also looking at issues around relief response. So policy and technical support for national government is something that we really focus on. The other element with the national and county government that we work on is also, like I mentioned earlier a little bit, is on looking at issues around resilience. The technical support includes some of these assessments that we are talking about. We work very closely with NDMA through the Kenya Food Security Steering Group to conduct this assessment, which is giving us the numbers and the projections that we are talking about. So that area of technical support with the national government is there. At county levels, also we work very closely with the counties, also in supporting the development of the county development plans, and for specifically this discussion, through the county steering group, specifically to answer the question that you raised around not duplicating efforts. So work with the county and NDMA, and county commissioners, county government at that level, so that we ensure that the resources that are available reach as many people in need as possible. Then the third area that we are currently, again, now working on is now actual response. And we were very privileged to get relatively good support from some of our key donors. First of all, through the UN instruments, like the Flash Appeal, and also through some key donors, majorly from the USAID. And we've been able to launch a program, Lisha Jamii, that is covering 12 counties, including your county, Isiolo, and Bonakatelo, Marsabit. And with this intervention, we are reaching over 546,000 people. So we are targeting about 89,500 households, reaching 546,000 people. We are majorly providing, so we started this, part of it, for this particular intervention, we started just before the elections, and then moving in. And we are majorly using cash transfers on a monthly basis. And we are targeting to provide these cash transfers for 6 months. So we're looking at up to January next year. And we're providing about 6,500 per household per month, which means that with cash transfers, and Bonakatelo had indicated the benefits, dignity, choice, and also infusing resources into the local economy. So with this program, we are actually pumping in about 540 million per month into the Kenya economy. And this week, as we speak, is one of the weeks when we actually send this money out. And Mheshimiwa, for your information, for Isiolo, it's about 22 million on a monthly basis that goes into those communities. And also, and we just don't do it blindly. I think Bonakatelo had kind of indicated this, but there's an assessment that is conducted to see where cash transfers will work. So if the markets are functional, then we use cash transfers. And that is why for North Hall in Marsabit, we are actually providing food assistance through in-kind, actual food distribution to about 5,500 households. So that is about 30,000. That 5,000 people are getting actual
yeah, because I was wondering which criteria you would use to say, okay, so this is the area where would specifically, work best with cash transfers, and this is the area that, would mostly need food.
Exactly. Right. So not to use too much technical jargon, but we have something we call the market functionality index.
Correct.
That informs us. We look at how functional is the market, and Kenyans are very enterprising. So if there's resources like money in an area, then supplies come. And you will know that sometimes we face issues in Kenya where there's bountiful food in one part of the country, but people are hungry in one part, and it's because they don't have the resources to access. But if that resource is there, then that will move.
Makes it easier.
So with that, we then we can get informed on where we believe the cash transfers can and will work. Apart from this, we are also supporting the nutrition intervention. When we came in, you were playing some video about the nutrition support for children and pregnant and breastfeeding women. And with this, we are covering 15 counties. On a normal basis, we work with the national government to cover 8, but it has been expanded to cover 15. And we aim to support 80% of the malnourished, whether they're children or pregnant and breastfeeding women across all those 15 counties. So this is an intervention. The expanded one is an intervention that will go on up to, we are talking about July next year, where we'll again review the status of the situation.
Right. So
that is all based on the resources that we do have currently.
All right.
But like we said, the need is huge. So this is a major support, quite a number of people being supported, but like Mheshimiwa says, the need, given how serious this drought is, the need is still very huge. And our position is, one last one. Apart from this, we've been working with about 8 counties on resilience activities. So looking at putting in place infrastructure for agriculture production and things like that in Turkana, very successfully running. We have a very nice, good site in Isiolo, in Wajir, which are running, and that has been supporting 370,000 people. During this drought situation, those are also being supported throughout.
Right.
But for those, I say that the aim is, now that we've seen it can work, the aim is to replicate and have much bigger projects of that sort in those, because we see it can work.
Right.
You go to those sites now, it's green and producing, and the crops are being produced, so it can work.
All right.
So we just need to get the resources to make them at a larger scale.
All right.
Your question on school meals, and this is one of the areas where we work very closely with the government. I think it's about 3-4 years ago that we handed over the management of the school meals program to the government. So they've been doing a good job of it. I know there are challenges, but this is an area that we are not aiming to go back to, because I think Kenya is rated as a middle-income economy.
Right.
And there's some things that, as partners, we expect the government to take up and run with. So we continue to provide technical support for school meals program, but this is an area we handed over to the government, and we hope that the government will continue
to scale up,
to manage it.
Right.
And even in the future, even the nutrition program I'm talking about, our objective is, as the government settles and things get in order,
is a program that they can take up and ensure that
actually from the county level. Right from the county level. So these are right now we know we are in a situation that we need to solve.
We must deal with this.
We must deal with this situation. Right. But going forward, the things that we need to.
All right. So we're almost running out of time, but I'll give each of you just a parting shot. Your call to action right now. We are in this state, and the future isn't looking very good in case the rains don't come. Patrick, I'll give you that. Just 30 seconds, very quickly. Your parting shot.
Thank you very much. For me. Surely, as we've already put it this morning, people are in dire need of food, people are in dire need of water. And of course, we need to intensify and we need to upscale on a very large scale this kind of intervention. Otherwise, let's not talk much about livestock, because these livestock are now on the verge of perishing. You see, pastoralists have crossed all over to Ethiopia. Some have crossed from Isiolo to Marsabit to Isiolo, Samburu to Isiolo, Garissa to Isiolo, you know.
Who would imagine a camel which can go for days, weeks without water is dying?
And look, the sheep of the desert, the camel, which is quite a resilient animal, is now on the verge of, perishing completely.
Right.
And this is, and you know, if a camel perish, for most of these pastoralists, they have very good attachment to this animal.
All right.
And you know, they said, on a lighter note, they say first God, camel second, human being number 3. So their number 2 God is now on the verge of perishing. What will be life for these people who have been living to this for all these years? So for us now, we need to be to ensure that call for support and acknowledgement of locally led support. You know, the first responding is always local organization. This local organization must be given focus by all parties, UN bodies, international organization, whom we have been working very closely, and also, government at all levels. You know, should support this initiative of locally led response through local organization, because we shall always remain there, whether there is fund or not. We'll remain with these communities.
Not unless we change the situation.
Yeah, this is one thing. Upon national,
very quickly, Patrick,
we need to ensure that we are grateful to our partners who have been supporting this initiative, and of course, they have supported, but the need is huge. I don't hesitate to acknowledge all partners concerned worldwide, Maltese International, DKA, DKH, FAO. There are multiple of them who have been supporting us in this one, Christian Aid, Caritas Austria, Oxfam, Act Aid, all these kind of actors and collaborators have been supporting us.
Fantastic.
So we need to acknowledge their support and also still register our appeal for them to keep on supporting. Then lastly, conflict is in the middle of, you know, with this pastoralists.
I have to cut you short, Patrick, because we have completely run out of time.
You saw what happened to the camels, you know, the other day.
Right.
You know, I stand to be, I'm the chairman of Kenya Camel Association in Kenya. So I condemn the act which was done last week, and also sometimes back in Isiolo, camels are being cut. You know, this, and you know, an animal just looking for pasture, and it has no any boundary. So we need to be careful and to be mindful also in terms of seeing animal welfare is upheld.
Thank you
very much.
Okay, Mumina, very quickly, Patrick has eaten for both, you know, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Zainab. I want to say that we are in a crisis, humanitarian crisis. And I think what we need to understand is that there's no dignity in a situation where people are dying of hunger, where people are struggling to put food on the table. So my appeal is to all the stakeholders, beginning with national government, county government, donors, all the people who are supporting, putting their effort towards this part of the country, the 23 ASAL counties. Kindly, one-off support is not enough. The situation on the ground, the need is too much. We need a consistent flow of support to these people until they are out of this situation. So my appeal to them is, can you come together, you know, form a strong voice where we can comfortably pull support to them, not one-off food ration and then we disappear, and then we think that the situation is sorted. And to principals in schools, I want to tell them, be tolerant of these learners. Please don't send them home. The home is even worse. So try your best to keep them in school until we are back to normal. And to other people who probably are interacting with pastoralists, I want to tell them, kindly be tolerant. It's the hardest moment for them. If they walk in with a herd into your farm, don't kill their herd. Just try to understand and sort out the situation with some civility.
Thank you. Felix, very quickly. You get the last word.
First of all, thank you very much for hosting us to engage with Kenyans and to share our perspectives and the work that we are doing out there to help to manage the situation. I would like also to say that from a WFP perspective, I think we remain committed to work with the national and county governments and other partners to help manage this situation. And then and we really do appreciate the support that we've gotten so that we can play our part to contribute. And I believe that we should emerge out of this stronger and plan better for the future. So thank you very much.
All right.
And all the best.
And we hope to continue having this conversation more and more so that we
Yes.
can enlighten each other and also just take a, you know, a pulse of exactly what is happening on the ground. Thank you so much, Felix Okech, Programs Manager at World Food Program Kenya, Mumina Bonaya Golo, Woman Representative Isiolo County. Thank you so much. And Patrick Catello, CEO, PASIDA, which is the Pastoralist Community Initiative and Development Assistant. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming in this morning. But don't go away. In just a moment, your world is coming up in a short while. Winnie Lubembe joining me. Lubembe joining me in my... No, it's because I've talked for a long time. Don't worry. Slip of the tongue. A very good morning,
no,
Karibu.
Thank you so much, Zainab. But of course, it's a really, really important conversation that you are having really today as far as the drought. But of course, we also want to continue with the same, just a little bit different in this is as far as fires, because I think in the country we've had a number of fire incidents. And of course, the biggest thing is that 90% of these fires can be prevented. But the thing is, we're still experiencing that. So of course, today we just want to understand. So then what can we do to prevent incidences of fire? Or if
Fire
that happens,
just generally?
Generally, fires at home, in businesses, you know, all over the place. Yes, and what we can do to prevent the same.
All right, Winnie.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward to that conversation. Thank you so much.
All right.
And that's it from us on M Live. My name is Zainab Ismail. Continue engaging us on our social media platforms at Zainab Ismail at NTV Kenya. Have yourself a good morning, a lovely day, Monday, and a great week ahead.